Blazing fire. This was the scene in Tehran on Saturday night after an attack by the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, targeted more than 30 fuel depots and other locations that, according to Israel, are connected to Iran's armed forces. In a video shared with the outlet Iran International, oil storage facilities in 3 parts of Tehran can be seen engulfed in flames. Large fires can be seen in the west, east, and south of the capital. According to witnesses themselves, the fire was so bright that one resident even told the BBC it was as if night suddenly turned into day because of the intense light. But the tragedy did not end there. After the explosions, the rain came. Thick black clouds of poisonous smoke formed over Tehran, and then rain fell, seemingly mixed with oil, pouring down over the entire city. Many residents complained that they were having difficulty breathing. The Iranian Red Crescent Society warned that the rain could be contaminated with poisonous chemicals that might cause acid rain. These chemicals can cause chemical burns on the skin and serious damage to the lungs. However, it wasn't only Tehran that caught fire this past weekend. In Kuwait, a government building was engulfed in flames early Sunday morning after it was hit by an Iranian drone strike. Meanwhile, in Israel, although the cities were not burned, 6 people were injured, and one of them is in critical condition after being hit by an Iranian ballistic missile that is believed to have used a cluster warhead on Sunday afternoon. These are the first scenes in the second week of the war between Iran, Israel, and the United States. A war that, for now, seems to have no clear end in sight. But before we continue, if you are new to our channel, please subscribe so you will always be updated with this kind of video. Infighting, succession, and apologies. On the first day of the war, the biggest news was the disappearance of the former supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah. The initial attacks at the battle's start. But as the second week of the war began, another big news broke out: the appointment of his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as his successor. In recent days, the question of who will be the next leader has become a hot issue inside Iran. This even led to intense conflict within the government and the military, and the debate echoed loudly on social media. There was even a cleric who reportedly created a fan page on an Iranian messaging app. However, it was later taken down. According to Iranian democracy activist Mehdi Yajanabad, this conflict caused a deep division between the political and military factions within Iran. Because of this, the possibility increased that they would choose a tough or hardliner leader to unite the two camps again under one leadership. Vali Nasser, an Iran expert from Johns Hopkins University, told the New York Times that Mojtaba is the most suitable for that role. Among all the candidates, he is said to be the most suitable. He can quickly consolidate power and control the entire government system. This is probably also the reason why he was chosen by the Assembly of Experts, a council of 88 clerics elected by the public every 8 years as the next supreme leader. This decision was made despite a report by the New York Times. The late Ayatollah reportedly indicated to his close advisors that he did not want his son to succeed him because he did not want the position to become hereditary. On the other hand, the Times said that Mojtaba's rise to power shows that the powerful groups in Iran, including senior clerics, the IRGC, and powerful politicians such as the head of the National Security Council, Ali Larijani, have united in the midst of a severe crisis. Many believe that Mojtaba will be a very strict and tough leader, even by the standards of the Ayatollahs, not only because of his close ties to the IRGC, but also because of the personal and tragic experiences he has gone through. In the same attack that took his father's life, his mother, wife, and one of his sisters were also killed. Despite this, the regime's supporters in Iran greeted the news of his rise to power with great joy. In a video, people can be heard shouting, "Allahu Akbar, Khamenei is our leader." But aside from the question of why he was chosen, there is another question. Will he live long enough to truly lead? The Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, have warned that they may target the next supreme leader of Iran. Meanwhile, the President of the United States also said that the new leader needs to seek permission or approval, because if not, he will not last long in the position. Despite these threats, it seems that Mojtaba Khamenei will be the next supreme leader of Iran. His selection happened at a very sensitive time, especially after Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian apologized to Iran's neighboring countries because of the recent attack against them. It is rare for countries to apologize to each other, and even rarer during times of war, which is why Pezeshkian's statement is remarkable. He said that he considers it necessary to apologize to the neighboring countries affected by the attacks. "We have no intention of harming any of our neighbors." He added that Iran will not attack other countries unless those countries are used as bases for attacks against Iran. According to him, the earlier attack happened because of the fire-at-will policy allegedly implemented by the military. According to some analysts, the apology is an attempt to prevent the widening effects of the war throughout the region, in order to avoid it from turning into a much larger regional conflict. While analysts are trying to understand the real purpose of those messages, some powerful groups in Iran became angry because it was made public. In one of the most open criticisms against Pezeshkian, and as a sign of the deepening division within the ruling establishment, hardline cleric and lawmaker Hamid Rasai called the apology unprofessional, weak, and unacceptable. Another lawmaker, Mohammad Mananrai, said those statements are damaging to the country. Even Gholam Hussein Ehe, a cleric who is one of the 3 members of the Transitional Leadership Council along with the president, openly opposed and criticized the president and insisted that the attacks would continue. A few hours after the intense criticism, he released another statement in which he insisted that Iran did not attack its neighboring countries first. And this time, he did not mention any apology. Sanong Vakil, director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House, told the New York Times that this incident shows how weak the president's power is within a system dominated by the military. In a broader perspective, the exchange of words between the reformist president and the hardliners in the government is one of the biggest challenges Mojtaba will face in his new role, balancing between the moderates and the hardline groups in power. However, aside from factional politics and issues of succession to power, another controversial statement has emerged. Alaya Larijani insisted that some American soldiers were captured, but Washington reportedly claimed that they were killed in battle to hide what really happened. The U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, strongly denied this, calling the statement one of the examples of Iran's lies and deception. This is a serious accusation, and if it proves false, as it seems now, it could harm the credibility of both the claimant and the entire regime. And for a government that has long been unpopular with its own citizens, the complete loss of the remaining trust from the people and the international community could be even more dangerous than any military defeat. And when it comes to events on the ground, on the battlefield last Sunday, the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, attacked the aerospace headquarters of Iran. This facility is used for launching satellites, including the launch of the Qayyam satellite in 2022 using a Russian rocket. According to a report by the Jerusalem Post, this site and the expanding cooperation between Iran and Russia in the field of space technology have long been considered a serious threat to the national security and intelligence of Israel and Western countries. Israel is particularly concerned that the cooperation between Moscow and Iran could increase Iran's capability to launch intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, and at the same time, make it more difficult for Israeli spies to enter and gather information inside Iran. According to the report by the Post, some experts fear that Iran might include these satellites in a future nuclear weapons program, which could potentially be used to develop weapons capable of reaching as far as the mainland United States. At the same time, the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, also targeted 2 locations that they called Iran's most important ballistic missile production sites. The first is located at the Parchin military complex in the south of Tehran, while the second is in the Sharud area, approximately 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. The attack on Sharud is said to be especially important because this is where most of the missiles used against Israel are reportedly made. According to the IDF itself, the recent airstrikes have caused significant damage to Iran's ability to produce missiles and may have delayed their missile program by several years. Israel emphasized that these attacks have had a significant impact on Iran's ability to arm its proxy forces in other countries. Another important target was Mehrabad Airport in Tehran, where 16 aircraft were destroyed, which according to the IDF were allegedly used to send weapons to Hezbollah. And this is where Lebanon comes in, where Israel conducted a major operation over the weekend to search for the remains of an Israeli pilot who has been missing since 1986. According to a report by The Guardian, at around 10 p.m. on Friday, 2 Israeli helicopters landed near the houses of Nabachip and Karbeh along the Syrian-Lebanese border in the eastern Bekaa Valley and deployed soldiers. After this, the soldiers went to a cemetery in Nabachit, and began digging up a grave where it was believed the remains of the missing pilot were buried. However, according to the Lebanese army and Hezbollah, they immediately detected the entry of the Israeli forces into their territory, and that was when the intense fighting began. According to Hezbollah, their fighters ambushed the Israeli soldiers outside the cemetery, and they were even supported by local residents. The fighting continued until 3 a.m. In the videos of the incident that spread, you can see a series of tracer bullets flying through the air. Meanwhile, you can hear residents calling for help from other villages, most of whom are armed and supporting Hezbollah to help push back the Israelis. In response to the attacks, Israel launched at least 40 airstrikes on the town, resulting in at least 40 deaths and many more injured. The operation in Nabaket is considered the deepest incursion by Israeli forces into Lebanon since November 2024, when the Israeli Special Forces captured the Hezbollah operative in the city of Batroun. This shows the continued expansion of Israel's operations in Lebanon as their clashes with Hezbollah intensify in various parts of the country. Meanwhile, U.S. operations also continued over the weekend. U.S. forces targeted a freshwater desalination plant on Keshem Island in Iran, which is located in the Strait of Hormuz. According to Abbas Araghchi himself, the foreign minister of Iran, this attack cut off the water supply to more than 30 villages, and he warned that the United States has set a dangerous precedent. Regional observers have long feared that desalination plants could be targeted because they provide water to millions of people across the Middle East and are easy targets for governments that want to put pressure on their enemies. Currently, there are more than 400 desalination plants in the Middle East, and together they produce almost 40% of the world's desalinated waters. When a major service is disrupted even for a short time, normal life suddenly becomes extremely difficult for many people. And this is also what happens in the Gulf state. As an act of intimidation, Iran carried out a drone strike against Bahrain that caused damage to a desalination plant and injured 3 people. Despite the damage, the National Electricity and Water Authority said that the supply of electricity and water would remain online. Bahrain is particularly vulnerable to such attacks because they have no natural aquifers and rely almost entirely on desalinated water and a pipeline from Saudi Arabia for their residents' water supply. According to Neil Kolalan, Associate Fellow of the Middle East and North African Program at Chatham House, in an interview with The National, the incident is a major escalation of tension. According to him, Iran has shifted from attacking assets that harm the Gulf economy and the global energy market to targets that directly affect the livelihoods of people in the Gulf. Aside from Bahrain, Iran also targeted the United Arab Emirates over the weekend, attacking multiple targets, including Basad Airport in Abu Dhabi, a residential building, and a hotel. The UAE Ministry of Defense announced that they intercepted 16 ballistic missiles launched towards the country, and another missile fell into the sea. There are also reports that the UAE responded by attacking an Iranian desalination plant. And if this is true, it would be the UAE's first retaliatory strike since the war began. However, this was denied by a senior official to the Jerusalem Post. Another source close to the UAE spoke to the Post, saying that Israel leaked the report about the UAE attack on Iran, and it was reported that Abu Dhabi is having difficulty understanding Israel's actions and the nature of the briefing from Jerusalem. This statement could imply 2 things. It could be the UAE's effort to distance itself from attacks on civilian infrastructure, or a sign of growing tension between Abu Dhabi and Jerusalem regarding how the war is being conducted and revealed to the public. Meanwhile, in Jordan, analysts have confirmed the extent of the damage from an earlier Iranian strike that targeted a site related to the high-end terminal high-altitude area defense system, or THAAD. Satellite imagery showed that a radar unit, which is part of the THAAD battery stationed at Mafraq Salti Air Base, was damaged. This radar system is believed to be the AN-TPY-2 radar, a highly sophisticated missile detection system made by Raytheon, estimated to cost around $500 million according to U.S. defense budget documents. This shows how high the cost of war is, not only in the Middle East, but also for Washington and Jerusalem. Washington and Jerusalem. Finally, let's move on to 2 stories that could shape the outcome of the war, or at least its course in the coming weeks. First, according to Axios, Israel's attacks on 30 Iranian fuel depots last Saturday went beyond what the United States expected when Jerusalem informed them in advance. causing the first major disagreement between the allies since the war began. While Israel insisted that the fuel depots were being used by the Iranian regime to supply fuel to various consumers, including their military organs, a U.S. official told Axios that they did not think such an attack was a good idea. Washington has two main concerns. First, the U.S. is concerned that Israel's attack on infrastructure used by ordinary Iranians could backfire strategically and push Iranian society to support the regime. We should mention that although the regime is highly unpopular because of its harsh actions, including the brutal crackdown on protesters last January, there is a long history of unpopular regimes using foreign attacks to rally national support for their government. According to an interview with Professor Richard Weitz from the Tufts University Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, it is estimated that about 40% of the country supports the regime. If it hits public infrastructure or affects the livelihood of ordinary people, the percentage of those supporting the regime could increase even more. Second, the U.S. is concerned about oil prices. The video of the burning fuel depot could cause panic in the oil market and push oil prices even higher than they are now. According to one of Trump's advisors speaking to Axios, the president does not like this kind of attack because he wants to preserve the oil and not have it burned, since this would remind the public of high gas prices. The president's concern is valid because the average price of gas in the U.S. has increased from $3 per gallon before the strikes to $3.45 now, and it is expected to rise even further. And according to some analysts themselves, prices could reach an all-time high before the end of March. The backlash from Washington over the strikes is really intense. Lindsey Graham, a longtime Israeli hawk who coached Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on how to lobby President Trump to act against Iran, has openly criticized Israel's choice of targets and their failure to ensure that the Iranian people can recover when the regime falls. Although it may not sound like strong criticism, the release of this statement from someone known for fostering close relations with Israel shows just how serious the administration's concerns are about the impact of the strikes. Second, while Washington and Jerusalem are arguing about the oil-type strikes, both governments have discussed a more ambitious operation. According to my own sources, the U.S. and Israel are discussing the possibility of sending special forces to Iran to seize and secure the country's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which is estimated to be around 450 kilos in the event of a critical stage in the war. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio himself revealed the possibility of such an operation in a congressional briefing when he said that people need to go in to secure Iran's enriched uranium. Any operation to seize the material would require U.S. and Israeli soldiers on Iranian soil, who would have to navigate heavily fortified underground facilities in highly contested areas. Several sources told Axios that such a mission would likely only happen when both countries are confident that Iran's military can no longer pose a serious threat to the forces involved. However, unless they are able to neutralize or disarm every member of Iran's armed forces and their allied militias, the risk of the mission will remain high. For now, such an operation remains hypothetical. But the very discussion of it shows how confident America and Israel are that they will win the war. The U.S. president himself also said in an interview with the Times of Israel that the war will end by mutual consent between him and Prime Minister Netanyahu. For now, the fighting continues. And until the war ends, we will keep monitoring the events and provide updates as they happen. So if you want to watch our next videos, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you again in our next video.